All right. Ready.
Awesome. Okay, then all you're going to do is just click up and click the screen share.
You want me to start that right away?
Mm-hmm.
Done.
Good. And then once I see that pop up, I'm going to just throw it on your screen and it'll stay there. There we go.
Okay. And there's one extra there. Okay, cool.
Cool. Oh, I'm so glad you included some of these.
Oh, really? I was worried about it. I'll talk about it when we start chatting, but I'll explain why I was worried in a minute, I guess.
Okay, so tell me about this image and how you created it. I'm sure a lot of people are very interested in how you create these.
You think so? I think a lot of people are doing this kind of stuff now.
Yeah, but not well.
Oh, I guess there's a lot of just static stuff out there. All right, well, this is actually something that my friends and I really get into. We called ourselves the Steel Wool Guys. I know it's kind of corny, but we have a good time doing it. So we were out doing a pre-trip for one of my actual night photography classes where we were going to spin the steel wool, and we went to this location to scout it out, and there was this old tree here, and my buddy Gabriel there, he's like, I've been here before, I should jump up in that tree and spin the wool, and I'm like, yeah, maybe, because that's ice below you right now, and if you fall, you're going through, but no, he's like, I'm doing it, so he gets up there and he starts spinning it, and I was using a real wide lens, and I figured I'd get nice and close to get a different perspective and shoot from a low angle. A lot of these things I've seen, it's pretty static, it just happens in front of you, and you're just basically shooting straight on to get the full spread of the steel wool burning. But I wanted something a little different, so I got in close and got a different perspective. I like the branch leading into them. I find that kind of leads you right into where Gabriel is, and yet the steel wool spinning everywhere, bouncing off of everything. I love how my favorite part of steel wool is the bounce. When you see especially on ice, you don't see it so much when you're shooting in normal weather, but when you're shooting on ice, you can see that bounce just go and go and go, and it's just an amazing thing. And when you can get in close and see all those details, it's pretty cool.
That's pretty awesome. Now, you were recently doing like a class teaching other people how to do this, weren't you?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I do. I work full-time selling cameras, but about 2 years after I started working at Henry's, I saw a real gap in how people were being taught their photography. It was basically all classroom-based, and a lot of people learn well that way, but I never did. I'm not a big classroom kind of guy. Finished high school, off I went out and do my own thing. So when I saw how people were leaving the classroom kind of confused, a lot of information, it's like drinking from a fire hose. You're getting all this information, and it's hard to digest it all in one 3-hour sitting. So I thought, what if I were to start day trips and teach these people how to do things, actually doing it? So I asked the owner of the company. He said, yeah, no problem, go for it. And that was awesome because he didn't have to do that. They have a whole school of imaging division of the company, so it was nice he let me do that. And that's been since 2008 now, and every year we do about 15 to 20 sessions, and anything from night photography to trips to Algonquin Park and wildlife and all that kind of stuff. So these were my night classes, pretty much my favorite thing. You said it yourself, and I use this all the time when I'm teaching. The word photography, the actual definition, was taken from Greek words, phos and graphos, which is essentially drawing with light. And as you say, we're light painters, and this is what we do. So I take that to a little bit more literal sense sometimes, and that's exactly what this is.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting to see it come together. And I've seen a lot of people do light painting, but I haven't seen it to this degree of intensity. Like, I see a lot of them doing the little cliche cute things like writing the letters and stuff like that, which has its place, like on greeting cards. But
I like doing that actually just more for a teaching environment, so you can actually show somebody how just moving a little stick in a pattern can leave an impression. So as a teaching tool, it's really helpful just to do the letters and the words and so on. But I see what you're saying. I mean, as a photograph you're going to put on your wall, it's not what you're thinking.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that would be very cool if you knew the people in it, but not necessarily something that you would buy as an art piece with the people being like anonymous models. Now, in creating this with the steel wool, all of the offshoots that you're getting, are those sparks that are coming off of it? What creates the lines?
Yeah, it's interesting. Steel wool, the steel itself doesn't burn.
Okay.
So it's actually the chemical around the steel that smolders.
Okay.
So if you light steel wool and you just let it burn, it'll just fizzle out. You have to spin it, and you have to have oxygen going on to it all the time so that these little smoldering embers fly away. So what you do is you take a whisk, like a egg beater whisk, and you pack some loose raw steel wool, very, very fine steel wool that you buy bulk into the whisk. You attach the whisk to a chain, and you can use a 9-volt battery, you can use a lighter, whatever you want, and just kind of touch it to the steel wool. I find that like a little blowtorch, mini blowtorch works best because it's always on and it just works. You touch that to the steel wool, and then you just start to spin it, and all that you see flying off of that center circle is the smoldering embers of this chemical that's burning and smoldering, flying in through the air. When you're watching it with your eye, like I shot a video. You mentioned that I did the teaching class on Sunday night. I actually shot some video with my phone of the steel wool spinning, and I was going to post that to the community, but
yes, please
at the end, my colleague said something kind of stupid, so I'm going to cut that out before I post it. Anyway, I just haven't done that.
Right, because everybody in our community is,
well,
business-oriented all the time. I can see how that would be a concern.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Maybe I should just let her rip. But yeah, we have so much fun doing this. This was, like I say, the pre-trip for the actual session we did. And on the actual session, we had a competition. We had 3 guys show up with their own contraptions that they built to spin the wheel or spin the steel. And the patterns we were getting were absolutely amazing. One person on a drill, so you're getting a very tight circle, just kind of spinning around, and you can create some really interesting geometric patterns, and it's really, really fun to play with. But it's dangerous, so you have to dress right and make sure that you don't leave anything burning after you leave, because this stuff is shards of burning metal.
Yeah.
And I did one shoot where I actually put my camera in the path of the spin, and the steel wool was actually hitting the front of the lens, and I had a filter on, of course, but the metal actually burnt itself right into the glass on the filter. So it's pretty dangerous. Yeah, it's dangerous stuff. The video of that was really cool, though. Watching all the sparks.
Commitment to the shot right there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I'm so fascinated by this. I totally forgot I'm supposed to be critiquing you. I just want to learn now. So we can definitely get into that more in the group. But as a whole, I love this image for the sake that it looks like a piece of art. It's probably one of the closest I've seen to where a photograph becomes almost like a sketch or a painting without the heavy retouching, because everybody does the overlays and stuff to make them look more painterly, but this just has that quality, and all I see are like sketch lines with all of the flares from the light. I agree with you that I like the main branch leading in, and I also like that there's little spouts of light on the other branches falling off from it, because it gives it this almost like waterfall effect of illumination that I think is just very cool and very visually sexy.
I never even thought of it that way, but that's exactly what it is. It's a waterfall of light.
Yeah, see? Coin that term.
That's really cool. It's done.
So the only things that bother me, and this is something that couldn't have been helped in the photograph, but I might have changed in retouching, is it bothers me that just this one top corner at the left here, you lose the light and there's no lines, because it's so powerful and detailed everywhere else that it's really, really noticeable that it's not there. So I might have gone in and just cloned or added some lines digitally or cropped it a little bit differently, because I just feel like it's kind of pulling away and weighing. I would have liked to have seen just a little bit more of the model of your assistant up there. You kind of lose him in it. So I get the feeling that it's a person, but he's kind of got this, which I guess works. He's got this like almost like Robin Hood anonymous Cape Crusader thing going on, but there's just no definition to his face and his figure, because it's so dark in comparison.
The only way I'd be able to get that is with a flash, because that's a 30-second exposure. So, you know, just his body motion spinning it is what's creating that softness.
Right.
But yeah, with a flash, I could have fired that in there separately and lit him up a little sharper.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see that, but I can't imagine like how much has to go into that and the difficulty and whether or not, you know, figuring out the, you know, the exposure difference so that you could expose for him but not lose any of the light, and because I do think it's really powerful with the high contrast too. So, but I'm supposed to pick apart things that I think you should change.
No, that's really cool. If I were to mount like a flash on a super clamp on the other side of the tree branch there, flash him separately, coming kind of. I'm getting too into it, I guess, but no, I'm just thinking of how you could do that, and that's a neat challenge.
Yeah, definitely for next time, I'd be interested to see how you pull it off. But really, those are my only two. I think it works very, very strong as black and white. I'm really glad that you did that, because I think the color would have competed and diluted the image as a whole. The only other things that I'm finding distracting are the little bits of light down directly below him. I don't know if they're sparks or if they're lights off in the distance from like a house or something, but those distract me a little bit. And on the rock in the front, because it stands out and it's so bright at the bottom, that one really kind of juts out, and it looks like there's a stick on it. And I don't think it's really adding to the composition, so I may have just like cloned that out and fixed that. But overall, I think it's an amazing image. I'm going to give it a 3. I think it's exemplary.
Oh, thank you very much. That's really cool. Oh yeah, I was going to mention the reason why I didn't want to share this in the first place. I was watching the Ron Clifford photo review, and he saw one of my students' photos who had posted it, and he made a comment how he doesn't normally like the steel wool, but her shot was different, and so that was cool. That was good to hear too. All right, so next one?
Yes, next one.
All right. There you go.
Okay, so tell me about this one.
All right, so I am a bit of a freak, and I love the Toronto Zombie Walk and anything to do with zombie culture, of course, Walking Dead, all that stuff. I've had the organizer of the Toronto Zombie Walk on my web show, and she's done photo shoots with me. I did one called Beauty and the Beasts, where there was zombies and pretty people. We taught, you know, studio lighting and all that kind of stuff. I had a special instructor come in and teach that, because, as you know, I'm not a big portrait guy. But this was walking around at the Zombie Walk itself, and there were about 6,000 people dressed up like nutty zombies and just cruising around Nathan Phillips Square in Toronto. And this guy was actually on stilts. And I loved his outfit. I loved his costume. And I was working with the creative lighting system on the Nikon, so you have the flash off camera and pop-up flashes triggering it. And I had a red gel on the flash. So I was walking around taking pictures of all these zombies with this unique lighting, you know, off-camera lighting. It looked a little bit better, having some red color to it. I thought this guy's outfit was amazing. This is, by the way, this is October 25th, right? So this is freezing cold, Toronto, rainy weather, and this guy's barely wearing anything, just some leather strapped here or there. So he was freezing, but he was totally working it. Asked him if I could take a picture. Of course, he kind of gave me his pose, and I fired the flash underneath to balance the light coming from behind, so there'd be a little bit more fill. There was only one big problem, though. Because I was using the red gel, it ended up completely oversaturating all of the fur in his face, so there was red washout everywhere, and you really couldn't see anything. And that was actually the original reason I went to black and white. I took the saturation away. I noticed that it brought the fur back out and the texture of his face back out, and I thought, I have to do this or else this photo's a fail. So I took out the saturation, saw it looked great, flipped it into NYX Silver Effects, worked on it there, and that's how I came up with this.
Awesome. Now, did you cut out the background and then put that in behind him?
You know what? I don't do any of that. I don't do any composite. Okay. I don't do any texturing. And it's mostly because I'm not confident doing it, so it always looks really goofy to me. Okay. So no, this is as is. The backlighting and the fill light was all done in camera. Now, this is one of the photos that I got some great critique from Tom on. He made some suggestions about getting rid of the person in the back underneath his right arm, some of the detail behind. And I tried that, as I mentioned to you in our chat that we had, I tried that in post since then. I didn't like the results I was getting. I found it too isolated. It kind of took away from what was going on above. And I figured, you know, it's an environmental portrait, so put the environment in there and just let that kind of be. But I'd like to hear your opinion on that.
Well, it looks like there's actually a person pretty much under each arm, which I'm guessing is just the people behind in the thing.
That's right.
It is a little distracting, I think, but I kind of feel like the whole background as a whole is kind of pulling away from him. I would have been interested to see it shot at a slightly more shallow depth of field just to kind of blur some of that out so it was all about him because he's so strong. And the image is so busy and there's so much texture and so much to look at that you don't really get to give him his, you know, his due. I love the lighting that you got on his face and his muscles. There's something about his abs, though, and I guess it's like a string hanging down from the fur. That bothers me and takes away, and I'm not sure why, and it may have had something to do with the color cast and just the conversion to black and white, but there's just something that looks off to me about that texture a little bit. And it looks like under the lighter colored fur that's on his chest that he's got like another piece going down, and those white lines that are on the edge of the fabric really distract me as well, and I'm not sure why, but it just pulls me away.
So like the leather skin part of the fabric?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just that very stark white line like right at the edging of it that just creates this severing visually for me that you kind of have like a hiccup before you get to the rest of the photo. And I'm not sure what the thing is that's behind him, like directly over his shoulder, if that's part of the outfit or... Yeah,
it's a wing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It looks like wings, but it doesn't look enough. It looks like it should be wings, which I'm guessing is part of the zombie effect, but there isn't enough there to really tell you what it is that I keep going back to that and going, what is that? Which can be good or bad because sometimes the more that people can't figure it out, the more time they spend looking at it, which is, you know, a bigger impression that it makes, but nah.
Do you think if I just cloned him out and then blurred, like give a soft blur to the background, that would be enough?
I think that would strengthen the image because he's so strong and so unique looking in it that I think he should be the feature. So I would be inclined to just give a really soft blur to the background and then maybe just tone down the contrast just a little and maybe even darken it up a little just so that he really pops in it and creates that 3D kind of thing of it. But overall, he's just giving amazing presence, which for me is like rule number one when you're shooting people is that you have to have that energy from him, and he's definitely in character right now and throwing it around.
Yeah, that's why I like shooting this kind of stuff is you get that. It's like I shoot wrestlers too, and that you get that from them as well. I don't have to ask for it. So I think that's a big reason why, again, I don't do much portraiture because I'm not really great at drawing that out of people. I'm more of a, oh, you're looking awesome, let me capture that kind of a.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, so I think it's commendable. I'm going to give you 2 points. I don't think you quite hit a home run with it, but I also think that it's above just like a starting image.
Thank you.
So, next one.
All right. So this one was, again, shot on one of my pre-trips for an actual day trip. My wife and I like this place that's local to us called Joker Hill. It's owned by the University of Toronto for scientific research and so on. It's actually a protected area now. And we are lucky enough that we were allowed to go in there a few times and just wander around. I talked to the administrator there, and he let us do a couple day trips there as well. It was a rain out basically for this day trip, and this was the day before, so it was also very misty and rainy, and that's what that feel's coming from. I was using a Sigma 500mm lens, and I zoomed in all the way to 500 to get this area way off in the background, and it also really gave a nice shallow depth of field, which softened up behind it, that separate back layer. This was a shot that, it was my first photo that I ever took that people really thought it was a piece of art, if that makes sense. When I shot it, just the reaction that it got from my coworkers who are photographers at Henry's and friends and so on, it kind of encouraged me that I'm on the right track, that I could I could potentially do something as an art form rather than just, you know, helping other people make their own art. I believe that there's a difference between understanding photography and being an amazing photographer. There's artistic sense that comes into play that you have to either really work on or just have naturally. And I'm one of those guys that I felt I really had to work on it. So this is one of those photos that showed me that I was finally on the right track and I could do something about it. So, my mother-in-law knows I'm doing this, and she's calling me now. Yay! Oh well, I'll just close the door more. There we go. So, yeah, that's this shot. I submitted this for one of the Henry's staff photo contests, and it won. And it's up at all the Henry's stores across the country here, and it's pretty cool. Yeah, but the more I look at it from a new set of eyes, you know, I see different things about it, and you know, some things that I like and some things I don't. I always felt that it was a bit too on the grainy side, a little too airy feeling, and the tree on the right side has always been a bit of a frustration for me. I wasn't sure if it should be there or not. Some people I ask, they say yes, it kind of stops the eye from going outside the photo and brings it back to the upper layer. Some people just say it should be gone, but if I crop it too much, I start really losing the detail, and with the grain of the photo, this is shot with a D700 full frame, so it's 12 megapixels. It's not a high resolution photo. I can't crop and crop and crop and crop, especially when there's already grain present. So I figured, you know, it's another one of those photos that I tried to rework a couple times, and always go back to the original.
I think the tree would go if it was mine. Whether you're cropping it, and if you feel like you're losing important information, then I would probably just clone it and trace the background over and stretch it a little more. And this is one of those things that just really prove art is subjective, because it's awesome that you won the Henry contest and that you have it hanging in stores, and I gotta tell you, I'm not a fan of this one.
Okay. That's fine.
So, you know, but take it with a grain of salt, because obviously plenty of other people loved it enough to put it in stores and use it for marketing, you know, and visual appeal in the stores, and are loving it. But as far as a landscape photo, and I mean, you know, like in the Arcanum, there are some incredible landscape and architecture photographers, not the least of which is Trey Radcliffe, who's, you know, owns the whole thing. You know, I do think it's a little bit noisy. The center spot just bothers me a little bit, because it's like, I want to say that it's a little overexposed and blown out, but it's not. But it's kind of muddy, and I'm not quite sure what's going on with it visually, and it may have been the retouching. I'm thinking a lot of it has to do with how far zoomed in you are. It's pretty, but I don't think that there's anything really wowing about it. My favorite part is the fence, and specifically the part that's kind of dilapidated and falling down, and I like the texture of the catty nine tails, you know, and the higher weeds. But
I think if I was shooting with a D800, I'd probably be able to get right in on the fence, and that's my favorite part too. Is just the texture of the wood, and I like that.
Yeah, like, I would actually be interested to see you kind of crop this more as like a panorama, like maybe like a 16 to 9 ratio kind of thing, and see how it works without all of the bluish evergreen in the back, or cropped in on the fence. I think that you could play with the crop a little bit and kind of change the perspective of it. But for me, this one's kind of missing the mark. I'm going to give it a 1.
Fair enough. Thank you. That's good. That's good advice.
You know, I think part of it too may be that it's so far removed from the other two images that it's just not making sense in your collection too.
And it's interesting you say that too, though, because this, as I say, was one of my earlier photos, and I've really gone from that to pictures that just want to punch me in the face. You know, I just love that dramatic. You look at it and you're like, there's something popping out of this shot, right? A lot of that was my processing. A lot of that, you know, is how I'm thinking when I'm shooting now. But you go through progression. You know, you start off at a certain place, and the more people you expose yourself to, the more influence you get, the more taste changes. So it's really interesting. I think that's a big reason why I love photography so much, is because it's never ending. There's an endless pot of knowledge that you can draw from different people's experiences, which is just awesome.
Well, it's funny too because we did Damien's critique earlier, and he had one that was from very early in his career that he threw into, and I'm thinking, you know, in the realm of picking apprentices that are very in common with me, we have an emotional attachment that kind of blurs our vision a little bit as to what's going on.
It's funny. I always talk about that too because it's true. You have an emotional attachment to certain photos. You put yourself in the place of the photo every time you see it, so of course you think it's better than it may be. So that's totally valid.
Yeah. Okay. Next image.
You got it. So this is taken on one of my wildlife day trips, and this is Luna the owl. She's about 86 grams. Sorry. She's tiny, tiny, tiny. She's a Saouette owl. I don't know if you've ever seen the TELUS commercials, TV commercials. Do you have TELUS down there? Yeah, I think you do. With the little owl that dances, pops around. That's this owl.
Okay.
So she tours around to different schools and goes all over the place. Anyway, I was using a macro lens, and I got a nice sharp photo of this guy, or this girl, sorry. I just love the way the detail around the eye is sharp, and you can see all the people in the eye. I like that you can see people. I know this is going to sound kind of weird. When I'm taking pictures during day trips and that, I enjoy having people in the shot. I know everybody says, get out of the photo, get out of the photo. To me, it shows a different feel to the shot, knowing that there's people around enjoying it, people being there, whatever. If I were to sell this, that would be a different story, and that's something I want to talk to you about afterward, selling my art, because I've never considered myself as being somebody that should do that. But yeah, those are probably things that I'd have to talk about and probably try and change the way I think about photography before I start selling my stuff.
Well, I love this image. Again, it's very, very, very different from the other ones that you're putting in, but I think it's beautiful as a wildlife photo. I don't mind that you can see the people in her eye, but I love the negative space around her. You draw in right to those eyes, which are what owls are known for, those big, you know, expansive eyes and that, you know, that wise kind of look. The depth of field is fantastic. I love all the sharpness of the feathers around it and that it very slowly kind of fades out. I don't have any negative critique for this one. Well done, exemplary.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I was nervous about this one, to be honest with you, because it is a wildlife shot, and you know, it's I hate saying it, but it's almost a staged wildlife shot because it's on a day trip, and there were, you know, all kinds of animals that we were shooting, getting in the cage with wolves, things like that. So I almost felt like I was cheating having this opportunity, but
you totally were.
It totally was.
All wildlife photographers will tell you, but it may be less of a wildlife shot than it is sort of like animal portraiture. But either way, I think as a shot, it works, and you nailed it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right, so I guess we move on past it then.
Yeah.
All right, so I got to eject out of here because for whatever reason it didn't open it properly. There we go. And there's number 5.
Okay, so tell me about this one.
So my wife and I were in Algonquin Park at this cottage that we used to stay at for our 17th anniversary last year. And I had, again, the 50 to 500 Sigma lens, and I was just wandering around, grabbed my camera, and off I went for a couple seconds down a trail, and I saw this guy peeking out from underneath some ferns, and I thought, I wonder if I should try a focus stack. You might know Don Komarechka. He's a friend of mine down here or up here, and I love how he does his focus stacking, and I'm always trying to find an excuse to try something different with that. So I figured, why don't I? All right. One of the things I teach when I'm talking about shallow depth of field and so on is the 4 ways that you can create shallow depth of field: sensor size, focal length, aperture, and proximity. Sensor size, obviously, we can't change, so I purposely brought out the full frame 700 rather than use my 7100 crop sensor, so I can get shallower depth of field. I zoomed in all the way with the 500mm lens to get focal length in play. I got as close as I could where I still had focus to get proximity into play, and I opened up the aperture quite a bit to get the shallow depth of field from that. So I tried to combine all these 4 ways that I always talk about as a mini challenge for myself to do this, right?
Right.
So I set it all up. I had my tripod nice and low. I had my flash on. I used my flash for this as well, so I can bring out all the color and detail. And I stacked 7 images at different focus points to get as much depth of field as I could get, but also have the nice soft blurred background and foreground. Mm-hmm. And that is what came out of it. I was pretty impressed. This is my first focus stack. And aside from a few small places on there where you can see that it's a bit soft, most of it is pretty good. Now, I did not crop in really tight. I know that, you know, close is better. I didn't do that for a reason. And again, this is one of the comments that was given to me in some of the advice from the cohort, where I might want to get in closer, get rid of the fern to the back and the right, do something with some of the rocks in the front or something. But I actually like it the way it is. I like having a little bit of depth. It almost pulls you back and front. You're seeing that it's in a real kind of foresty environment with the stuff in the background, and yet it's so separate and so isolated on its own that it really stands out.
Yeah, I agree. I don't mind necessarily that it's a little bit wider, and you know, one of my favorite quotes is "Know the rules so you can break them like an artist."
Mm-hmm.
So I think that you have to understand what the rules are, more importantly, why they are, so that you understand when they come into play and when they don't. The fern in the back doesn't necessarily bother me as far as being in the shot, but I do think that the green is so saturated and potent that it's actually pulling your eye away from the mushrooms, which are the star of the shot. So I may have just toned down the color and the saturation a little bit, and maybe even just darkened it just a little. Specifically, there's like this one little offshoot that's kind of following the curve of the mushroom over. That's the one that really pulls me away.
Gotcha.
But I love the color tones of the rocks and that kind of pearlescent blue and pewter. I think that is a really nice contrast from the mushrooms. And I love the change in the depth of field, because it kind of almost has this oceanic kind of like wash of ebb and flow between focus and not. So you kind of like go in and pull back out and like go in. Like you can spend a lot of time looking at this image, which I think is really good. That said, I think it's a really lovely image, but there's just something that's missing from it, and I can't even put my finger on it, but there's something that keeps it from being just like a wow, oh my god kind of image, and I'm not sure what it is. It's one of those things that, yeah, probably.
It needs hobbits. I know. I was gonna get some hobbits and hire them for the job, but they just weren't handy at the time, so I moved past the hobbits.
Yeah, well, those hobbits cost you a point, so I'm gonna give it commendable. I think it's so close. It's almost right there. It's one of those things that, like, you taste test something and you're like, it's missing something, and you won't know what it is until you taste it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's commendable, and I dig most of it. I just don't think it quite crossed the line into exemplary.
Fair enough. I have 2 exemplary photos. I'm ecstatic.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so now you can turn off the screen share so I can see your handsome face.
Well, thank you very much.
Then we got about 25 minutes that we can talk about where you're going and where you're at and all that good stuff.
Awesome. I do have a question about portraiture.
Okay.
I have done a lot of portraiture for my wrestlers, and I would love to show you a shot and see just what your opinion is of where I'm going with this. Would that be all right?
Yeah, absolutely. So just pull it up and open, and when you're ready, you can switch it to screen share. While you're doing that, let's talk a little bit about where you are and what you're doing. So you work for a camera company, and you teach, and you shoot. So is photography kind of your full-time thing right now, or are you looking to kind of move away from working with a company?
Photography is all I do in one capacity or another. I run the Newmarket Camera Club. With the online thing in Day Tripper Photo, I'm always busy doing that. I've got the web show. Like tonight, I have a web show on photo evaluations, which is really timely that we're doing this right now. I get to stay fresh in my mind for the show tonight. With everything that I do, I shoot events locally, but it's mostly charity work. I've never considered myself as a photographer for hire, more of a a person that can give you the tools to get yourself on that road to being the photographer to be hired. Does that make sense?
So you resonate more with the idea of instructor rather than...
Yeah. I love helping people understand the fundamentals of photography. I'm very new in photography. I've only been doing it since I started at Henry's. Before that, I sold audio-video equipment, and that's been my thing. So I don't want to give myself this credit of being a great photographer. I want to be the person, look, I get photography. I understand the settings. I understand composition. I understand, you know, cameras and how they work and the gear and all that kind of stuff. But I'm still working on the artistic sense, and that's where I was really hoping that the Arcanum would really help me with that, because I don't have that where I am. I'm looked at as the person to give other people that, and yet I don't have that for myself. I never did. So having this community and having these people, you know, people across the world give opinions and take their time out of their days to help me understand what being an artist in photography is awesome. So that's what I'm really getting out of the whole Arcanum experience.
So are you looking to focus more on the artistic side, or are you looking to more just hone in your skills so that you can continue on the teaching side and
no,
add more?
I want to transition into the artistic side for sure. I want to bring that to the teaching as well, of course, because I don't have plans on stopping Day Tripper, but the fact of having better sense of artistry and coming up with photos that I can actually feel proud to put on my wall and do that kind of thing, that's where I'm really hoping to get to.
Okay. Do you have that image up?
I do.
Okay,
right.
Let's see it.
Here you go. Prepare yourself.
I'm so prepared.
There you go. So, I don't know, can you see it yet?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. So essentially, this is wrestlers, right? And as I said before, I'm not a big fan of asking people to pose. So this is the shtick that these guys kind of have, and I'm totally getting into the black and white tone, and I find that I've settled myself into a certain look for certain things. So like color number X for 2013 photos, and color number X for wrestling photos, and so on. So I don't know if I'm stuck in a rut, but it's fun, and these guys really like when I show up, and you know they are basically telling their friends and other wrestlers that they should come to this wrestling group because their photographer does photos like this for them, and they don't get that anywhere else. And I hear that, and I think, okay, so all your photographer friends suck, because my pictures are like, you know, I'm just learning how to do this. The lighting is fun, the post-processing is tedious and takes forever. I just wish there was a better way to get a look that I visualize in the photo, the end result. And I'll flip through. There's a couple here. There's that one. This is one of the first ones I shot like that.
I love that one.
And this is a guy who's actually now in one of the major wrestling groups on TV and so on. So they call him the Zombie Princess, so of course I'm going to like him, right?
Right.
And then, is there more? Is that it? That's it there. Stuff like that. Trying to go for a different look sometimes. But as far as the lighting, I mean, you're a portrait expert, so I feel kind of awkward even showing you these, but.
No, I think the lighting is really good. And this first one, and this is always hard once you start working with multiple people and doing anything from family portraiture to group photos. You know, it's hard to nail the light beautifully on every single subject without a lot of setup. So if you're shooting this more almost candid and, you know, and you're going for the emotion, then I totally understand why you're not quite nailing it yet. In the first one that you showed, the guy on the left, you just lost a little bit of it in the in his eyes there on the cheekbones, that really harsh shadow coming up on either side, which I think is totally okay to sacrifice in terms of expression, because with this kind of portraiture, it's all about the energy that they're giving. If they were just standing there, then it would just be, you know, well-lit, composed photographs of some guys. But, like, this is totally the energy that I'm sure they're giving while they're actually wrestling and at the matches, and
Mm-hmm.
who they are and who their personas are. So you're bringing that out. I can see them being very, very happy with these as sort of their like persona, alter ego wrestling things. So, and there's a quote that I read, and I cannot remember the source. Maybe somebody else can put it in the comments, but it's basically, if you want to photograph their clothes, you photograph them in color. If you want to photograph their soul, you photograph them in black and white. And I think that you are embodying that in your work. Like, you are able to take away all the distractions and everything else. And I think in the absence of that, you're really connecting with these people on a more primal, intense level. And not only are you connecting with them on that level, but you're allowing other people that are viewing the images to
Cool.
connect on that level, which I think is really, really powerful.
Thank you.
So I don't think you're in a rut at all. I think you're getting in touch with your personal style and what makes your images potent and will set you apart from everybody else.
Right. Cool. That's good to know. Thank you. I'm just going to throw my setup at you for a quick second. I use 2 Bowen's strobes.
Okay.
And I have an umbrella and a softbox, and I usually put them just off to the side and up above. Is that how you would suggest I like for that? Because you mentioned the lines down there. You're right. I mean, basically, I'm in a basically a closet is where I shoot for this stuff. I have my backdrop, which is practically against the wall. I have the wrestler, and then I'm maybe 4 or 5 feet away from them. So I have no room at all to work in this environment. And basically, the wrestler just steps in, steps out, steps in, steps out, and they have to go back on stage or go back and do their match. So I'm catching them at, I have 3 or 4 photos I could take each, and so the time, the rush, as you mentioned, when you have people one coming after the other, is there a better way that I could light to make it more flattering and keep that consistency a little bit better? Maybe a third light, or
really, I mean, you can go on and you can watch it and you probably already know, like, the 1 light setup, the 2 light setup, the 3 light setup, but really the bottom line is just play. Like, do you take assistants with you to these at all?
Actually, Blake is one.
Okay.
Blake and Stephanie and Isabel was one. So some other folks that are in the Arcanum and Ron's cohort are in my crew. So.
Oh, that cohort. Well, we won't call them for that. No, and his cohort's full of amazing people and amazing info too, and the fact that you're so connected with them, I would definitely be touching base with them as well and getting a lot of different opinions. But really, like, the bottom line is that I would just show up 20 minutes ahead of time before you can even begin to shoot them, and I would just grab your assistant or a couple of random people and put 2 or 3 people in and just test shot it and see, I know that there's all kinds of ratios, and there's, light meters, and there's setups that are supposed to be foolproof, but the bottom line is break the no chimping rule, take a couple of shots and look and see what the problems are, and then correct from there.
That's essentially what I do. Blake's usually my model for that.
Yeah, and I think that your images are very powerful when they're by themselves. The only thing that I'm seeing is that you're sacrificing a little bit of light on one of them when you have 2 of them in the shot. So I would just be careful of that, and I would be very specific to pull 2 people in. And then if you have free run of this place and they're pretty low key, then maybe what I would do is when you do get the light right, if it's not changing anytime you're there, then I would just have like a little note on your phone or whatever that says this is where they were, and what the exposures were at and what the lighting power was at, etc. And I would just mark little like X's in like electrical tape on the floor for where your lights are, so that because it may be that this lighting is perfect when it's just me, but as soon as you put someone in, you have to pull this light back 2 feet just so that you don't get such a harsh fall off. And the bottom line is that if you really want to connect, and if you really want to have potency visually outside of the expression and the energy that they're giving, always catch the catch lights. That's, if the eyes are the windows to the soul, then catch lights are opening up that window for you. It just adds life to the photo even more. It's that twinkle in the eye kind of thing. Even if they're big, burly wrestling dudes, they should still be twinkly. Like Santa.
Like Santa. Perfect example. All right, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that.
Good. Okay, so we have about 15 minutes left. So let's talk a little bit about where you're looking to go and what you really love and what's your dream scenario.
My dream scenario is, well, to own my own store, teaching photography, have my own shop, and have people be able to just kind of walk in and get a basic fundamental class anytime they want and do walks around my area and do all that anytime I want. That's my dream. I'd love to have a gallery in my store as well with photos for sale, and some of those mine, some of those would be, you know, artists in the area, local artists that I know and people that I feel deserve some push, and help them out. I do a lot of charity community work, so I want to make sure that anything I do is going to benefit the community that I'm in, and that's the way Day Tripper has been since day one, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, so I want to sell my stuff. I've submitted photos to iStock. I'm on iStock Photo, and I've made a total of $46 in about 12 years. So I'm not a big stock person. I had one photo, panoramic I made of Niagara Falls on iStock, and it was selling very well, and it got pulled because I took it from the Skylon Tower, and it's a 9-shot panoramic. So you imagine how wide that is of Niagara Falls, right? They found a logo on the bus way down at ground level, and they pulled the photo from iStock. And it's the only photo that I ever had that sold. So
couldn't you just edit that logo out and re-upload it then?
I tried that, and they declined it after that. So it's just so touchy. It's just so frustrating and stressful. And you know, I tried 8 times to get approved to get into iStock, and there's so many reasons why I kept on being declined with lighting and with, you know, I was using a Sony Alpha at the time. It was horrible noise and all these other issues that I totally got discouraged from thinking my photos could sell at all. So I've never considered myself as being the person to sell photos, so that's something I definitely want to get more into. And I want an app. I want to design my own. I have an app design that my friend Gabriel and I have been working on, and it's genius, and it's absolutely beautiful to look at, and I've got so many great ideas for it, and I don't know who to talk to or who can do app design and who could help me with this. So I don't know if you might know of anybody who could lend me some help.
I have a couple of connections. We'll talk offline about that.
Cool.
So as far as your shooting and you being an artist and selling your work, did you get to sit in on Damien's critique at all?
I haven't yet. No, I wanted to watch it before I did this. I just got so distracted with other things. I never had an opportunity to.
No problem. So we were talking about the fact that Damien has this very unique ability, because you hear a lot of photographers and teachers say specialize, specialize, specialize. It's the only way to have that potency in your brand. And Damien brought in these really gorgeous architecture photos, and then he brought in these portrait photos. And it was really interesting because in looking at them, you could put one of the portrait photos next to one of the architecture photos, and they worked as a pair, which is very rare. The biggest thing that I'm seeing in your collection in 5 is that there's no consistency. So I would have a very hard time pulling those 5 photos and knowing they were yours if I hadn't seen them before. Yeah. Whereas the 3 photos that you had picked of the wrestlers, I could definitely put together as a set. So I would start thinking about what it is that you want to be known for. That doesn't mean that you can't shoot the other stuff, that you can't enjoy the other stuff. It just means which ones do you want everybody to associate with your name. You know, and that's the kind of thing that as you build that and we sort of brand that artistry around your name, then you can add to it with other ones, because people will accept it more naturally just because it comes from you then, because you've already established yourself as the authority on it. Now, if you were asking me, I would say the light painting images, and I would say the wrestling images are your strongest ones.
That's exactly what that's exactly where I would kind of hover myself there, and the zombie stuff, the street stuff.
Okay. So I don't know that I would include them just yet, just because I think that they're good, but I don't think that they're strong enough to really pull. Now, that's all going off of just the one image that you showed, but that one did not get exemplary from me. It's still very good, but it's just very good, and there are a ton of very good photographers. So if you want to be, then I think your light painting and your wrestling portraits are the 2 that most distinctly have a brand that others couldn't compete with right now.
Awesome.
So I would start there. I think that the wrestling images offer you the opportunity for multiple sales points because you can do them for the wrestlers and you can sell them to them. You can also sell them licensing rights. So if you're creating, go ahead.
That's something I want to touch on. Wrestlers make $25 to $50 per event.
Okay.
These guys are not wealthy. How do you charge them?
Well, one, the amount of money that they're making has very little to do with whether or not they can afford your work, because people buy things they can't afford all the time. People buy cars that they can't afford, they buy houses they can't afford, they buy, you know, all kinds of random things and toys and shiny things that they like because the value of what that brings into their life is more than what they're being asked to part with. You know, if people want it bad enough, they will find the money. And I'm sure you can think off the top of your head of 3 things that you've bought that you probably shouldn't have bought right then. You know, from the point of looking at finances. You know, that's just the way that it is. I'm not saying to take advantage of them, obviously, but the people that that's potent for, you know, that'll be a good thing. The other thing that you can do is if you're taking these photos, what's your relationship with them now? How are you doing this? Are you not charging them for them?
There's no charge right now. It's basically me just showing up to the events with my crew and shooting and having a good time, getting a lot of learning in how to shoot the events and how to do the portraiture and so on. And it's turned into something that they kind of rely on and depend on. So I've been trying to transition that into a paid thing with them. The wrestling group that I'm shooting for, basically just the owner quit. So he's not doing it anymore, and some of the other people have picked up the slack, and they're taking over the reins, and their professionalism is at a different level. So I'm hoping that I can have talk with them and say, look, guys, here's what I've been giving you for all this time now. Here's what was promised to me by Chris at one point, you know, pay for this and pay for that and so on. So it's time either we start doing that or I'm not coming to these events anymore. So I guess that's pretty much how I have to handle it at this point.
Well, it's more, I don't know that if you have new owners that I would necessarily kind of strong-arm them because they didn't enter into any agreement with you and they might, honestly, they might not care. So I would be looking at what the benefit is for them for you being there.
Marketing.
Can you answer that?
Yeah, it's marketing. It's their marketing. It's giving them branding. It's giving them consistency with their what they present to the people that view.
And who are you marketing to for them? Are you still there? Did we freeze? Oh no! Oh, I think I lost you. So this has been the JLark critique, and I'm just going to fill the airwaves until we reconnect. Okay, so let me... Technical difficulties. We did so well not having any. Well, that's no good. Let's see if we can get him back in. This is all live, and this is exactly what you don't want to happen when you're live and on the air and people are paying attention. So, yeah, throw in some comments. Keep me amused. We got about 3 more minutes. Okay. Well, I'm just going to talk to you like you are here, and you can come back and you can watch it later. So I think as far as being able to monetize the wrestling thing, that I would definitely be going after the building owners and the heads of the organization itself, because it is good marketing for them. But I would look at you know, looking into possibly like a you know, the ability for them to license the images rather than just selling the prints. So especially if the wrestlers themselves aren't necessarily wealthy and don't have the money to invest, but it is two-tiered. You know, there is the branding and the marketing for the organization as the whole, and then there's also the branding and the marketing for each of the individual wrestlers and participants themselves. And obviously, the bigger that these individuals get and the more people that are fans of them on the lower levels, then they come up to the organization itself. And, you know, that helps the organization out as well. So you can do both. So it's two-tiered. And chances are that the top tier is where more of the money lies for you to be able to charge a premium rate. So it might be the kind of thing that, you know, you sell at one fee to the wrestlers, and if you are also advertising yourself, then it might be the kind of thing that you're either selling prints, like say, like 5x7 postcard kind of things, like rec cards kind of thing that can have all of their stats, or, you know, I know a lot of them usually have nicknames and things like that. That you could put that up, and I don't know, like their weight class, and I don't follow a lot of wrestling, so I don't know what all the things are, but like the same way that, you know, you collect baseball cards and they have all their stats and their batting average and, you know, what team they're on and stuff like that, you could do a version of that for wrestlers, and they could have collections of the cards that they could then sign and autograph and give out to their fans, kind of thing, with like the best image. And then you could probably also do like bigger poster prints that you could hang out in the building, and maybe consider offering it at a slightly discounted rate for the wrestlers themselves, that they get a discount if you get to keep your website and your contact info on, so that other people can contact you if they want to do it as well. So I think we got him back. Let's see. Can we go back? Okay. So yeah, so I would just work on that. I don't know. Oh, we're gonna open up a second one. Okay, so because we're gonna connect him back, I think.